If you're a fan of Joy Toy or Acid Rain, please go ahead and hit the subscription button down below and hit the bell notification so you can be notified every single time I put out new content. Please go ahead and check out my YouTube channel itself or look in the bio down below, where I will be putting in all the links of everything that I posted thus far, so you can go ahead and get caught up on all the Acid Rain and Joy Toy videos I have out. And I will be putting out more stuff in the future, all obviously based on the release schedule of Acid Rain and Joy Toy. But I appreciate you guys tuning in to my review, and let's go ahead and get the feature started. Let's get it, guys. Alright, you guys, so it should come as to no surprise at this point after I blew the lid on the Kelsey video that Acid Rain is no longer that niche brand. They're coming in for the kill and they're bringing out some really nice stuff. Now, up until this point, I know that a lot of people have had their indifferences about Acid Rain. For the people that have been able to commit, mentioning, basically the overall looks and aesthetic. Well, coming from this video on, or should I say the Kelsey video, and now followed in with the Osprey Commando that I'm about to show you guys, this is really the real deal in terms of widespread popularity that I think that they're going to have moving forward. And it's going to start today with one of their more regular looking characters, the Osprey Commando. And to be honest, he's anything but regular. This is one of the best regular infantry troopers, right? Non-unique characters that they put out so far. I'm going to go ahead and break down every single reason why you need to jump on your closest retail shop and order this bad boy, and order more than one, because you're going to regret only having one when he has so many display options, right, you guys? So let's go ahead and break it down for the NAUS Osprey Commando. Let's get it. All right, you guys, so this episode is sponsored to you by Load Up Freight Management. We find the loads that pay what you want going where you want. Now listen, if you've been paying attention to the trucking industry, you'll know it's a billion-dollar industry. And currently right now, there's a really huge backup of work, which is the reason why we're not even seeing a lot of these guys in stores right now. So please link up with my guys at Load Up so that we can go ahead and start getting all this moving again. And we can go ahead and start finding some cool ass action figures on the streets again at our local Targets, Walmarts, and comic book shops. Load Up Freight Management. Go ahead and check in the description below for the website and link up with my guys. So when it comes to Acid Rain, you guys know that their box art is top notch, worthy of any kind of graphic novel panel, and this Osprey Commando is absolutely no different. So as you can tell, it's a very dynamic pose. They look like they're in the thick of it, and honestly, they look very accurate to what we actually get in the box set itself. Honestly, this is exactly what they look like in hand, down to the weapons. And actually, there's a couple of things I just learned from actually paying attention to what's on screen. The exoskeleton that we've seen before on the Civet company, we're actually seeing this guy rocking it right here, and I'll touch base on that a little bit later. But as you can tell, we have two. They look like they're in a forest. They both look phenomenal. One's wearing the backpack, the other one is not. And then they're both holding different weapons, which I will show you guys later because they do come with both of them, which is basically a rifle and then like a pistol carbine version of the same rifle. So again, it is a very nice look to it, as you can tell. NAUS on the top right, which if you pay close attention, you'll notice, as I've mentioned before with the Kelsey review, that this right here looks like the East Coast of the United States, so Florida to New York right there, and some of the inland, which is pretty nice. At the bottom we do get the FAVA31, so that's nice, and then the, of course, Toys Alliance on the bottom right, and Scronix.com, which I'm not quite sure. I don't think I've ever visited that website, so we're gonna have to figure out what that is. On the side, we do get a really nice overall look of the Osprey Commando, just basically in writing with the NAUS symbol at the top, very standard for most of Acid Rain. And then on the back, we do get a nice photo of everything that it comes with. And as you can tell, those are the two weapons I was referring to, the machete, the backpack, the helmet, which is nice that it's actually removable. We'll get into that later. And again, we get all the legalese, all the details right there that if you want to pause right now and go ahead and read for yourself. And then the usual barcode with all the nice Acid Rain insignias on there, and of course NAUS again. Now, of course, what is an Acid Rain figure without the container that it comes in? Now, I should be lying, because what's really happening here is not all of them come with it, but many of them do. And in this case, we do get the same nice green color that we got with the Kelsey figure, and it does look really nice. It's done pretty well, and for the most part is pretty standard. It's just in a green color that we haven't necessarily seen so much. So again, it's really nice to be getting these new colors that's now being given to us in this new NAUS stuff. Alright, and guys, here we have both of the Osprey Commandos. I actually have 3, but for the sake of the space so you guys can see most of the detail, I have 2 here, one that is equipped to the brim and the other one that has basically nothing on him, just so I can show you guys an overall view of what it would look like both ways. So let me go ahead and give you the full 360 of what he looks like with all his armor on, and then I'll go ahead and go over to the other Osprey Commando who is basically without his extra gear. So as you can tell, this is just a dope looking piece that looks exactly like what's on the box art. Acid Rain does a very good job of doing that. You can recreate exactly what you're looking at and get it in person. So let me go ahead and break down what we're seeing here. So from the very top, as you can tell, the helmet is this very cool looking shape, very futuristic looking, and it's really nice. It has these 3 divots that are painted in, which is cool, along with what looks like a shielded head done in a very nice, I want to say a lot of it is like an olive garb color, and then we do get some breakup in the paint with these white details right here. I really appreciate that. It gives the helmet a lot more depth compared to what we got with the Kelsey figure. That looked very unfinished, which I'm not going to display with the helmet anyway, but here where you kind of have to, I'm really glad that they went with the way that they did. And then obviously we have the mouthpiece, which is more of the same color, and then of course this is Acid Rain, so everybody needs to have, well, I guess not the female characters because they're not given any of this, but these figures do come with like a respirator type system, which is really nice. You can see the collar under there with the exposed skin. Let me go ahead and pull them to the right a little bit. As you can tell right there, and again, it's got that granulated Acid Rain feel to it and look. And then we do have the vest, which is done very nicely, basically in this brown, well, more of a tan, almost sandy color, which again is nice. It gives it a lot of contrast to the rest of the body. We get the pouches right here. Everything is painted fairly accurately, even on the buckles right here on the shoulders. And then this piece right here, these 2 straps, they actually hold up the backpack behind it, but they don't actually connect directly to the figure. They just go around the shoulders, and I'll show you guys that a little bit later. But as you can tell, the look follows all the way down into the belt, and we do get, again, some of the same kind of, it's basically the exact same plastic above it, and it's done really nice with all the pouches. Now, with these guys being basically US, we're going to say Marine Forces, we do have some of that olive garb, Marine color that we get on the arms. Basically, the under uniform is this colored camouflage, and it's done again very nicely all the way down. I'm not quite sure if we've seen these shoulders before, but I do like there's not just round, there is a bit of a layer to it, and it leads into obviously the arms, the hinges. Even the hinges have a little bit of color into them. That's usually not done, so I appreciate that they did that here. It means that they're learning and adapting. What looks like a brownish color for the wrist, and then more of that tannish color for the fist. We'll get into more of that later. And then let me go ahead and switch to the other side. The other side is basically exactly the same all the way down. Hands look really nice. I'll just show you guys here since I already have them up. It is a nice looking hand, and as you can tell, the same paint color used for the gauntlets goes right into the gun itself, which is very nice. It's a very nice pattern that they gave to it that looks very cohesive. This is a phenomenal looking figure. As you can tell, they definitely did a great job, and this is the first time that we've seen this specific model, but we will be seeing this just basically in different colors in the future. Now, going down to the legs, this is just a lot of the same goodness that we normally see with Acid Rain stuff. Again, more of that camouflage coming all the way down to the feet, and then the feet right here done very good in this, again, tannish brown color, and they do look worn. They do look like there's a wash over them. That's very nice. These figures always have a lot of paint to them, which is really nice. It's something that we don't always see with figures that are of larger size. I mean, you guys have seen some of the G.I. Joe stuff. It's not that they're missing paint, but there's just not this level of detail when it comes to paint, and I love it, and I'm sure you will too. And then as you can tell, the knee pads are done fairly nicely. Those are a little bit more of a plain paint color, but that's totally fine. It works with the outfit overall. And then on the back is the exact same thing as in the front, and for the legs at least, compared to the hinges that we saw in the elbows, they seem to be a little bit less of that color in it. So it's more of just that regular grayish color that we get for joints, which is not bad. It doesn't look fully gray. It does look like there's a little bit of a wash in there, and I'm really happy that they're starting to implement that because it really makes it look a little bit more cohesive, and it somewhat makes the joints look a little bit more like they're not out of place. Now, as I mentioned before, I did want to show you guys what he looks like without his helmet, and he's basically a standard Acid Rain unhelmeted male character. This is the same one that they use for the Seth Ranger and basically all the armored guys. I believe the Civet company guys have this exact same head, so it's basically your standard male Acid Rain head, and it looks good. I think it's got a really good wash to it. It's kind of shiny, which I want to say is not always how they come, so that's badass. But as you can tell, it's not just one single looking head. There's lines right here that are actually carved in there, so that's nice. And the eyes themselves do look pretty nice. Let me see if I can actually give you guys a better... Yeah, it's not bad. They're blue. They're done very well. There's, you know, eyebrows in there. There's definitely a certain amount of detail in there. I'm gonna go ahead and turn him to the side. They even give him an earpiece, which is nice, and actually, as you can tell, more carving in there. So they definitely have some sculpt work in what is basically just a basic head, which is nice. It looks good overall, and it's something that they can continue to use. And I honestly have absolutely no problem with it. Let me see if I can adjust this actually. Perfect. So let me go ahead and show you the back. As I mentioned before, this strap right here is done in this nice grayish gunmetal color. I think it does a good job of bouncing off of the rest of the color of the figure, because they could have made it tan and that would have just made it kind of blend in more, but having that gray color does look pretty badass overall. And as you can tell, that is the hole where the backpack actually pegs in, which is kind of cool because it means that the backpack itself is a floating piece that's just kind of being held onto the figure rather than being pegged into the figure. And while that might seem like a weird decision, I personally like it. I think that it does a good job with the aesthetic, and this piece itself holds the backpack incredibly well. So it does look fine, and again, you can see more of the same brown colors and the camouflage all throughout the glutes and the lower back. And then of course, as you can tell right there, I believe it does say NAUS with a 4 right there on his chest. It's just kind of hard to see, obviously. Obviously, the Osprey Commando being a commando, he comes with a bunch of weapons and they can all be fitted onto him and they look wonderful. So let's go ahead and go through the accessories and basically show you one by one what he has. So we've never seen this rifle before. Actually, you know what? Let me start this way. We've never seen this rifle before, but this has to be my favorite gun that I've seen come with an Acid Rain figure. It looks very reminiscent of what the current Scar weapon looks like from the US military. So it's really nice that we're starting to see more of this modern take, or should I say an Acid Rain take on more modern weapons, and this looks really dope. It's got the stock, it's got the really big magazine, the forward red dot sight right here, the rails, the grip on the front. This is a really nice gun. Bar none, my favorite gun. I kind of wish Kelsey would have came with this, but I can always remove it from one of these guys and put it on her. But this is just a really nice weapon overall. Kudos to Acid Rain to adding something that's really badass. And when we come here, we get basically a carbine version of it that has basically none of that. No stock, no sight, shorter barrel overall, and it's literally the exact same copy of the weapon. If I go ahead and just put it just like that, as you can tell, it's identical. It just doesn't have all the extra accessories, so very nicely done. And then we do have this machete right here. Let me see if I can get it to... Yep, and so then we have this machete right here, which I don't think we've gotten before, but damn, is it badass. I think the only thing that's maybe more badass is Kelsey's knife that she comes with, but damn, this is really cool. It's done basically in all the same metal color and just given a wash all the way through to give it that Acid Rain look, but it's really cool. And these guys look like Roman soldiers with these curved weapons. Definitely really dope. This is big enough to really be a sword more than just like a hunting knife, but I mean, that's why I say it's more of a machete, since as you can tell, these guys do kind of seem to fight in a more marine, jungle type warfare. So really nicely done. And then of course the helmet that does come off of him, and it fits him perfectly fine. And as you got to see earlier, basically grays on the front, browns on the back. Oops, but it's done really nicely. And then last but not least, just so that you understand how cool this guy is, because you were probably wondering where that machete came from, we have this backpack. And the backpack itself, let me just go ahead and adjust that. The backpack itself is done really nicely. It's got a good look all the way through. It's got a wash, and luckily I like that they put this right here, because it could have just been the pouch all the way down, but giving it that blanket in there that's a different color, breaking it up, really accentuates the looks, and I appreciate that a lot. And it looks very realistic, but it goes even further. Oh, it pops right off. So you can pop the top off, and then you get basically a storage unit that is big enough to only hold the carbine version of the gun that slips in there, or the machete that also slips in there. Not enough space for both, but I will tell you right now, when you put the carbine in there, it kind of gets stuck, so I don't store it in there, but the machete fits in there absolutely no problem. And you're able to close it right up, and as you can tell, it's got those two tabs right here, so you know which way is forward and which way is back. So obviously, like any Commando, he does come well equipped, and like any Acid Rain figure, he does come with just basically the standard articulation. I'm going to go ahead and show you why this one is actually a bit better than a lot of the ones that we've gotten before. So for starters, the head does look up, literally to the sky. You can put this guy in a prone position and he can be aiming down sight, which is nice. Doesn't necessarily look great from the front, but again, you have him in a different position, maybe more crouching, and that's how far you'll be able to get him. He does look up, you see, literally like if he's torpedoing forward. And then he looks down about that far, which is not all that much, but it is enough to at least make it look like he is actually looking down, so I can appreciate that. And then the head itself doesn't necessarily do like the slightest pivot, but really it's more when you go off to the side like that you get a little bit more look out of it. So it does add a little bit of personality, not the most, but the head range going backwards, at least where you're really going to need it, is really nice. And I can appreciate how much we get in that neck. So obviously this is an Acid Rain figure, so we're not going to be able to get a full T-pose, but you are able to get that far, basically the standard amount as anybody else can from the Acid Rain line. And then the actual arm does do a full 360, which is perfectly fine. We have the upper bicep swivel right there, and then single joints at the elbows, but you're able to sandwich the arm, which is really nice. And then you do get that pistol grip right here, which goes into a full L. Look at that, that's 90 degrees. That is just as well as anybody else with this kind of joint in the Acid Rain line, which means you're going to be able to get him in all the poses that you would like. And then the other arm has the exact same kind of jointing. The only difference is you get more of that push-up hinge, which allows you to also go 90, which is perfectly fine. When it comes to the legs, he can basically do the splits. Let's go ahead and see how far. All right, so actually I was lying. He only goes about that far because of these two pieces right here. But if I do bring it a little forward and a little bit back, you can get him even further into the squat slash basically into the splits, so not bad. And as you can tell, his leg does come up to a full 90, maybe even the slightest bit past that. And then obviously he does have that upper thigh swivel, full 360. Double joint at the knees, which does allow for sandwiching the leg. Again, more articulation than you'll ever need. And then for the leg itself, it actually twists right here, right above the ankle, which again I really like. You do get the side swivel, which actually doesn't go too far. I don't know if Kelsey's was any better. Okay, so outwards is good, and inwards you just gotta force it a little bit, but he does have a good amount. And then he does kick down about that far, and then he does kick up about that much, which is identical to the other leg. Now the torso itself, I'm sure there's a bit more articulation that I'm going to show you, but basically he can do a full 360 from the middle joint, but he can't really go too far forward or too far back. It'll be fairly negligible, but again, he's wearing a vest and armor, not a problem. I think for the most part, everything you get here is very standard Acid Rain stuff, which means it's good. You're going to be able to get a lot of posing out of this. So obviously, guys, the Osprey Commando is second only to Kelsey. This is one of the best figures that we've gotten. Again, probably the second best figure we've gotten overall from Acid Rain. That's not to say I don't like the Civet Sentinel guys. Those were my favorite, but they have a few more caveats that make them a little bit more difficult to want to say, oh, this is the number one guy. He's going to be the number one guy to certain people, but I think this Osprey Commando, in terms of just regular non-unique figures, right, infantryman, this is one of the best. And one of the things that I like about these guys compared to, let's say, the Sand Engineers, which is one of the ones that got me into Acid Rain to begin with. I'm actually lying. Those are the guys that got me into it. Let me show you guys real fast. So for their hip joints, they have these things right here that holster their weapons. Now it looks cool, it looks dope, they look thicky boys. The problem is you have limited articulation in terms of how close the legs can get, and you kind of have to play around with it sometimes to get them in the right poses. With these guys being completely free of that, there is no problem. You can bring the legs as close as you want for an at attention pose, and as you can tell, they have a beautiful at attention pose, though I have to lean this guy a little forward because the backpack is quite heavy. It does look really cool overall, and I appreciate the look. Now, as I was saying, this is how I have them when they're fully with everything on them. The backpack's on, the machete's in the backpack, they're holding the rifle, and then they have the carbine on the hip. Now, nowhere on the box does it say that that's what it's for, but to be honest, I like the way it looks and it makes a lot of sense. But I finally realized something when I was looking at the box art, and let me show you guys what it is. So those hinges are not there in order to put weapons on them, though that's what I'm going to use them for. They're actually meant so that when they do come out with some of the armor pieces that go onto them later, like the exoskeleton from the Civet company, that they actually are used for the leg. Whoops, let me go ahead and show you guys. So here we have literally the exact same belt on both sides, which is the reason why they come with those pieces that stick out so that you can connect the leg to them. I really like the look. It does look pretty dope, and I'm now much more enticed to want to buy the one that's going to come out for the Osprey Commandos. The only thing that sucks about it is that the Civet company guys come with the exoskeleton, so it all makes sense to have it like that. These guys don't, so most of the time you're going to have it exposed just like that. And so if it's going to hinder some articulation, if it's going to kind of get in the way a little bit, you might as well use it for something, and that's kind of the reason why I have it displayed more as a pistol holder. And you can even use something else, basically any weapon that can fit through that little hole, or around, let's say, that peg. You'll be able to put it on their side piece, and I personally like it. I think it looks actually pretty nice. Doesn't always hold perfectly, but in terms of in battle, when you have them crouching and can get out of the way, and they are able to get most of the articulation that you need them to, and then it just looks like they're just basically locked and loaded to the brim, and it looks really cool. And if not, you can leave it bare. It looks perfectly fine even with it. I just like to think that if you're gonna have it, you might as well use some of that real estate and make it look like it's there for a purpose. And if you don't want to, that's perfectly fine. This was just my interpretation of what the Osprey Commando could be. So as you guys can tell, this is definitely one of the dopest infantry troopers that we've gotten from Acid Rain. They look just like the box art. They're very accurate to the source that we're getting. They come very well equipped. There's a lot of options, and even options that they come already equipped with that we'll get to see in the future, which again is really cool. And you can even option it out now if you wanted to, really. But for the most part, this comes with a fair amount of looks. You could do this guy unhelmeted, which still obviously looks really dope. You can have him without the backpack on and just with his sword out, looking really badass, as you can tell, which is, you know, again, a very dynamic figure that we're getting, that is very different from some of the other regular figures that we've gotten before. Which this level of variety when it comes to overall weaponry and the variety of just how you could pose these guys with different weapons, you know, different armor and all those different things. This is kind of one of the first times that we've gotten this much, right? I have 3 of them, and all 3 of them can be displayed with, you know, a different gun in their hands, a backpack on or off, you know, helmeted, unhelmeted, the machete in their hand. There's a lot to it, and this is one of the first ones because all the other stuff that comes unhelmeted, you almost have to have it helmeted, right? Like the Seth Ranger and stuff like that, or it has to be something that's special, like a Seth Ranger or one of the armored characters. So it's really nice that a regular infantry character, I was able to buy 3 of them, and they can all be displayed all separately, which again is just really nice. It's a cool look, and I appreciate that a lot from Acid Rain and what they've given us with this new buck that we're going to be getting moving forward. Again, we'll see some retooling, but we'll see this same general aesthetic moving forward, and I really like it. Alright, Trial Mob, and what is of course a figure review without obviously some scale comparisons. So I'm going to go ahead and put a couple things out here and show you guys how this fares against other of the same line and a few other things that I recently purchased. Now here we have the Sand Engineer right next to him, and for the most part it looks like the newer character at least has broader shoulders. The legs seem to be fairly about the same in terms of size, except for at the bottom you can tell it does get a little smaller on the Engineer, but they're about the same height, and I want to say that the Osprey Commando is the slightest hair taller, because it looks like to me that the jawline on one side does come up a little higher than the jawline on the Sand Engineer. So again, dope look. It's nice to see how far Acid Rain has come literally in the last like year and a half, 2 years. And that's not to say that the Acid and the Sand Engineer isn't cool. This Osprey Commando is just really badass. This definitely looks like something very militaristic and realistic compared to the Sand Engineer that still is all those same things, but definitely looks like obviously from a different army. And I'm starting to realize it's more akin to like the British Army. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm seeing here. All right, and here we have him next to the AMM Prospector, a female character. And as you can tell, she's overall smaller in basically most of the dimensions, even though it's a fat ass helmet. But if you take off the upper part of the helmet, then it's about the same. And as you can tell, he is definitely a little bigger, definitely a little taller, but this scales perfectly fine. This was back when Ori Toys was still doing their thing here. But as you can tell, this looks perfectly fine. They look like they're from the same universe, same granulated look. It's a really dope piece overall, and I really like the scaling here. All right, and here we have the Civet Company Sentinel, and as you can tell, there's a fair amount of retooling here. Same shoulders, same, I want to say, excuse me, so just the shoulders, just the shirt under it, I believe, is the same. The pelvic piece down to the knee pads is the same. Everything else is different, including the neck, for the exception of the same head, just done a different color. And obviously the armor is a little different all the way through. And actually, now that I'm taking a second look, I want to say it's the same vest. So again, a lot of the same retooling, and then as I showed you guys earlier, it is the same belt piece overall. But you know what, there's enough of a difference here that it looks really nice all together. And again, that's what I like about Acid Rain, right? There's a lot of this uniformity going on, but there's just different paint apps, other things that are happening here that make it look just different enough to warrant not feeling like you're buying the same figure over and over again. And again, this is just really dope. Civet Company, I love them, and I really hope we do get more of a regular figure moving forward without the armor, the exoskeleton, maybe something that matches more what we're seeing here with the Commando guys. But overall, again, phenomenal piece both ways. All right, and as you can tell here, we have the biggest camel bot that we have, the Interceptor camel bot. I'm actually gonna have to zoom out just a little bit to try to get it all in there. And as you can tell, he towers over everybody, so this is no different. So this looks pretty dope overall. Again, a lot of the same aesthetic, a lot of the same stuff that we normally see. So they look like they're from the same universe, even if they are, you know, different armor, different colors, and all the above. But again, this looks really dope. It's really cool to see just the variety that you can get out of the Acid Rain line, being from the exact same universe and just different branches of potentially different militaries. But for the most part, I really like this. Now, obviously, we've seen this comparison before, but just in case if you haven't watched my Kelsey video, go watch that. But here we have them both together, and they match up perfectly fine. They look like they should obviously be, you know, fighting along with each other. They have a lot of the same camouflaging, a lot of the same colors, a lot of the same weaponry. I shouldn't say weaponry, but at least a lot of the same cues overall that, you know, show to me at least that these guys are from the exact same military arm, the NAUS, and these guys look really dope. And if you've seen some of the photos I've posted online on some of the Facebook pages, these guys look so dope, especially when Kelsey's in the middle and there's at least a couple of these soldiers, you know, surrounding her. It looks really dope. She looks like a powerhouse, and her soldiers look even more badass when she's in the mix. So I really like this. All right, and some potential enemies here. We have the Reborn Trooper, and as you can tell, towers over him, physically larger, physically taller, big weapon too. So this is what he would look like against an enemy unit. And again, this looks pretty dope. They definitely look like they're from the same universe. But again, just look how different this guy looks in comparison, right? Just again, this is all the same universe, all the same stuff. These guys could come into conflict with each other, and again, it's handled really nicely. And of course, I have to throw some Joy Toy in here. As you can tell, they're both U.S. military. I still don't quite remember what Joy Toy figure this is, but again, that has some of that futuristic look to it. And as you can tell, they're fairly close to identical in height, but this one for sure, the Osprey Commando, is the slightest bit taller with that helmet. And even without the helmet, I want to say that the Osprey Commando has the slightly larger head, but they look great. And I'm pretty sure that if you had them fighting each other, they would definitely look good in your diorama and your photography. But these guys just don't scale the same way. Look, the broader shoulders, the different body type. Joy Toy goes for a more realistic approach, and Acid Rain has more of that graphic novel-y kind of look to it, that almost cartoony kind of look to it. And I like that a lot. I like them both. I think they both look good. You're gonna have your preference, but this is what they look like next to each other. And obviously you can tell they're not built the same. They're from a different cut. Alright you guys, so when it comes to these Osprey Commandos, the reality is this is the best stuff that they put out so far. Acid Rain has had this sort of look to it that has been, you know, very different. Obviously this is supposed to be a post-World War II apocalyptic era, so there's been this like look to a lot of their characters that have been a bit different, had a little bit of their caveats. They're great figures, all of them, and I love them all, almost sci-fi looking, and these ones are no different in that sense, but these are the closest to what a realistic modern military would look like, with weapons, equipment, and everything. And I think that this is the one that I think anybody could get into. If you're an Acid Rain fan, you're gonna love this, and if you like some of that more realistic Joy Toy approach, you're gonna be able to get into this. Remove the helmets and they just look like some SWAT team guys that we would see in today's military. You know, consider the different sizing of the weapons that are obviously a bit on the Gears of War side of being big. But if I could fit a regular weapon in their hands, again, these guys would look like the most realistic representation of what a military would look like in today's standard, or let's say in a few years. So again, this is what I feel most people are going to be able to really be able to access these figures. I think ultimately everything that's come from before, again, had that kind of sci-fi look, almost that Star Wars-y kind of look to it. I don't really know how to pinpoint it, but everything has looked a little bit, let's say, unrealistic for the sake of not finding a better word. And I feel like everybody who's been hesitant to jump on the Acid Rain line because of that, this is the beginning of that. This is the beginning of you going, I have no problem with this line anymore. This is very highly realistic. That's not to say that Acid Rain isn't coming out with more really cool futuristic looking stuff. I'm just saying that for those looking for a regular military that still looks badass, still looks retro, still looks different and very Acid Rain appropriate, while still kind of feeding into more of that realistic approach, these are the guys. So guys, this is still something that is currently available at Big Bad Toy Store, Pia Club. I believe Amazon and eBay might still have some, but definitely Big Bad Toy Store is ready to ship right now. And if you're across the seas from the United States, Pia Club is a reliable source where I was able to get all three of these, plus the extra Osprey Commando I have in another room, but that'll be for another time. But as you guys can tell, these are dope, they're realistic, they're done in a unique manner. They bring new weapons to the table, new backpacks that we haven't seen before, new armor choices, and a variety that, again, look at this. I have two Osprey Commandos and they look surprisingly equipped differently from each other and can be used in many different kind of ways. So do not pass this up. If you've been considering, if maybe you thought Kelsey was too much of a unique character and you wanted more of an army builder that was still realistic, that was still good, still had a lot of variety to them, this Osprey Commando is the guy to buy. And definitely do yourself a favor, buy more than one, because these guys look cool, but when you have a gang of them, when you got a whole trial mob of them, they look fantastic. So if you guys did like this video, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe. And as I mentioned before, please go ahead and give me some commentary as to what I can do to make this more accustomed to what it is you guys want to see. And again, if this is exactly what you want to see, let me know, because again, good feedback, bad feedback, it helps me build up the community and helps me build up how I want to make up my content to give to you guys, the community. And as I mentioned before, check out Skellywags TV. He also has a YouTube review out of this exact same character, and he does things just a little different and does show a little different viewpoints of these guys. So if you want to get more of a full picture, maybe I didn't completely sell you on these guys, I bet you he can. So again, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you guys thought, and I'll see you guys on the next Trial Mob feature. I'll see you guys later. Deuces.